Hey, welcome to the Relevant Development Podcast. I am your host, Juan Alvarado. Thank you for joining me today. Today's guest is Amy Brady.
Yep.
And you are the founder, creator, and everything in between for Flourish Labs. Yes?
Yes, founder, creator, not the everything, but I'll stick with those first two.
So tell us a little bit about the Flourish Lab and what it does and what you do with it.
Yeah, so at the broadest sense of the word, we do professional development for adults who work with kids. That's the broadest sense of the word of what we do. I would say about 85% of our work is in the world of after school and out of school time. About 10% is in day school, and then about 5% is in youth sports.
Yeah.
So we have a real passion for after school, and we are, Castle calls it adult SEL. That's really our jam, is adult SEL. I also call it emotional intelligence. Same thing.
Right.
So what we really believe at our core is that if we're going to work with kids on developing their social and emotional capacities, we have to be doing our work as adults. So that's our passion. That's what drives everything that we do. And then the other thing I would say is this. One is I've been doing this for a long time, about 12, 13 years. I'm going to ask you a question, but what do you think is the most requested workshop?
I know where you're going to go with this. Behavioral management.
Behavior management. The most requested workshop is behavior management. And in our work, we reject the concept of behavior management on principle. As it is, it comes from behaviorism, which is 100 years old, of control and punishments and rewards. And so we just reject that. So let's shift the narrative. Let's do something else. And so what do we put in its place? So that's what drives us.
Yeah, I heard somebody use the word behavioral support. I've heard a couple different terms, and I like the fact that I do something similar, but I do it with when people are like, can you come do a 4-hour training? I'm like, no. You know how long 4 hours is for somebody to be in a training? If we're going to do like 30 minutes, 40 minutes in actual workshopping, the actual thing, yes. That means we're discussing and we're talking topics and we're writing things out, but I'm not going to sit there and be a talking head for 4 hours. I've done it before, and I was like, this is a horrible idea. But I love the idea of the behavioral management piece of saying no, because this is what we view it as. I think it's a great, it's a teaching point. One of the ones that I use is, I just need better time management. Well, it's not time management. You can't manage time. You can't go and stop. I just added an extra. It's more self-management. How do you manage yourself more than it is time? And so on principle, same kind of thought process. Yeah. I heard you say something on a podcast episode not too long ago where you talk about before you even teach staff how to work with students, we have them work on themselves first. Yeah. Why is that so important?
It's this idea of, if I'm going to teach young people, what I care about with young people, right, is I want them to solve conflicts. Great example. And yet if I, as the adult, am having an issue with my coworkers, we have a real disconnect here.
Do what I say, not what I do.
Yeah, and it's I've had the chance in my career to visit all kinds of youth programs, and the ones that I walk into that are like the happiest, the most fun, the most peaceful, all those vibes that you want to get when you walk into a program, the staff gets along. Staff cares about each other. So when we're having those conflicts, it will inevitably ripple to young people. So that's the first reason is it's hard to teach those skills or expect those skills if I'm not constantly practicing them and working on them myself. And then the second thing is that I'm going to ask you a question again, is when adults come to working with kids for the first time, if they don't get effective training, how do they know how do they show up with young people?
They show up as themselves or how they were wired, as far as, well, this worked for me, so it must be right. I mean, that's kind of how I kind of see it.
Yeah. So it's either, I'm wired this way, or oftentimes too, it's like, this is what I learned because this was my experience as a kid. So this is what my family was like, or my community was like, or this is what my schools were like, or my coaches. And so I learned this particular way. And so how am I supposed to know anything different? Because that
should have worked for me, so why would it work for these kids?
Yeah. And so and that's completely understandable. Mm-hmm. When sometimes, those of us that have been doing this for a long time, it can feel frustrating. Like, come on, how do you not? but it's not always a natural instinct. And so, the word unlearning can be overused a little bit, but it is kind of that. It's like, okay, let's have an understanding of
Right.
how you were raised, the we'll call them limiting beliefs that you have about working with kids, and then let's kind of talk about that, and then let's go backwards, say let's try something new.
Right.
Let's try something new.
Yeah, we didn't have time for it today in the workshop that I did, but we talked about that 3 reasons why you have issues with having difficult conversations.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is lack of repetitions. One of it is the disease of what if, right? The negative what if. The other one is unresolved things that happened through your childhood to make it difficult to talk to another adult. And so I kind of want to stay here and go there, because I think I was reading your the keynote is going to be tomorrow, and there's something there I thought I read about, or maybe it was something else, but something about children's behaviors, not seeing them as like their behavior, but as past issue. How do you work with a child who it's like they're not the problem, it's this other thing? I don't know if I'm following.
Yeah, I'm following what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, this behavior is this big word when we're working with kids, like all these behaviors. And we as adults tend to have all these, I call them fears behavior, which is why we jump into this need to control. I mean, we don't ever feel a need to control if I don't have a fear. And you're talking about time management. There's a fear of not being able to control something, right? So how do we figure out what am I actually afraid of? So when we talk about behaviors are just human. It's just what it is. I mean, we're going to talk about this a little bit tomorrow, but I mean, can you think about a behavior that you've had in the last month that you weren't particularly proud of?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Especially driving.
Yeah, I mean, that's whether it's with. I mean, we both have 3 kids.
Yes.
Mine are 20, 21, almost 19, and 14. And you said yours were.
We're at going to be 17, going to be 16, and going to be 13.
Yeah, so we're like in that zone, right? And so as parents too, there's those moments that you are reactionary, you're not at your best, but we have behaviors. I do this for my job, and I have behaviors sometimes that I'm not so proud of, right? Or I don't feel great about. So it's not a kid thing. It's not a child showing up in your after school program and now they're having these behaviors and what is it about this child? It's about, they're having a behavior. And so how do we embrace behaviors as just what it is to be a human being versus this thing that I have to manage and control?
Right.
And so that's, and demystify it a little bit, that it's just part of what it is to be human.
Yeah. And because that's one of the things that we go into in the workshop that we didn't have time for, because it's like a 2-hour thing. We only had an hour today. But one of those things is those behaviors as children, like how do we handle the kid who can't keep still and is always walking around? Well, when they become 24, 25 years old and they're in the workforce, they're the ones that take the long route to the copier and take 6 or 7 restroom breaks and clean up their desk at 4:45 and it's supposed to be like we stop at working at 5, and then you have the kid that's always arguing and has something to say. Well, that's the person that grows up in their 30s that has something to say at every meeting. And so it's like these children who have it's hard for them to have difficult conversations because now they're adults, because we were growing up to be sit down, shut up, speak when spoken to. There's hurts, and now the 8-year-old Juan or the 10, 12-year-old Amy is now in the workforce, and no one's ever taught them or showed them, hey, it's all right to have issues and problems. Like we all have these behaviors, but this is how we go about them, or this is the workplace, and this is how we handle those things. But when we're talking about students, do you see that there's a correlation between like student behaviors and the adult behaviors, that they're like, it's just that thing?
Yeah, I mean, I want to go backwards a little bit. Like your third point, right? Your third point about like when we have a hard time having conversations because of what are your words that you used?
I just said that we had, I don't know, just issues in our childhood.
Yeah.
I hate to use the word traumas because not everything is a trauma.
Not everything, yes. So I sometimes call that our own stuff, but I don't say stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like we bring our own
You
stuff.
can say it.
We bring our own stuff to the table. I have plenty of my own stuff, right? So I love this conversation about hard conversations because I can sometimes have a fear around that because I'm afraid of not being liked, right? Or somebody's gonna judge me for something, and so we can trace all of those things back. So when we talk about kids, how do we help them understand their behaviors in then when they're growing up and developing,
Right.
so that as they get older, get into the workforce, get into relationships, create, whatever they want to create for their own version of success. How can they have already developed some of those skills of looking internal, saying, okay, I'm doing this thing, or I'm acting this way, or I'm having these thoughts. What is that actually about? Because now I have the power to shift
Right.
and grow and change.
I think it's a big part of, like we talked about SEL stuff, is it's not just tell me how you feel, but like why do I have this issue? Like, there was a great visual that I saw, a guy holding a bowl, and they pour water into the bowl, and then the guy shakes his hand, and water goes all over the place, and he's like, ask the audience, why did water fall all over the place? And like, because you shook his hands. And he's like, that's what you would think, and that's the victim mentality of things. But water spilled all over the floor because I put water into the bowl. Watch this. Here's the bowl. And then he shook him. He's like, did any water fall out? He's like, no, because I didn't put water into the bowl. So it's just cool to see, like, there's an understanding of, hey, sometimes I need to kind of look at myself at things. Like, yes, there's a trigger, to use that word because I know it's kind of a hot word. But at the same time, do I allow the trigger because I haven't addressed it yet? In having kids, right? There's always where are you having new siblings?
I do.
Where are you?
I'm the middle child.
Oh, so you have those issues. I'm the youngest.
I don't think we want to go there today, though.
So, like, I see my boys completely different, right? Like, the way I would address my oldest is going to be different than I address my middle child, and it's going to be a little bit different the way that I address my youngest. But I think a lot of times at schools or even in the workplace, we want to address everybody the same way.
Nah.
How do we address people or students in the way that's going to be cohesive for them, or to help them with their issues or problems, or how to address things? Or do you believe that there's kind of a blanket way that we can address everybody?
I would say both. I mean, my first thought on that is the remembering it's not about me.
Yeah.
And if we take myself out, then I naturally come over here to you and explore and get curious about what's going on with you. And so I think that's...
How do we do that, though? Because I think there's a lot of times where, again, we're reactionary. And like old school parenting, right? I'm somewhat of a believer, but I definitely don't treat my kids and parent my kids the way my parents did. I think there was some validity to it and some stuff that worked. There's a lot of stuff that didn't work. But a lot of times we're reactionary. Just listen, or just fix it, or knock it off. But is there a conversation so how do we get out of ourselves in that kind of that way that you say, like, what's a good way to think about it's not about me? Because I think a lot of times it's go back to controlling, right? I want to control the situation. Somebody's bickering, someone's fighting, whether it's our own kids, whether it's us working with kids, or even staff.
Yeah.
Hey, can we just figure this stuff out? Like, figure it out. Mm-hmm. That's might not.
Yeah, and I
get outside of ourselves.
I think the first piece to that is, it's understandable we get frustrated by that. Like, I think we kind of want the ease, and of course, who doesn't want like the ease and everyone to feel good and happy and all the things. So I think first of all, it's just validating our own experience. Yeah, it's understandable that it's frustrating sometimes because it is.
Yeah,
it is. And then it's a willingness to do the work, because it's this idea of shifting from reaction to response. But when I'm reacting, it's just knee jerk, right? You do a thing, whether you're my own child or you're in my program or you're my coworker or whatever it is. It's just that knee jerk. Now I've snapped at you or I've shut down or whatever one of those things are. So how do we pause? And one of my favorite pieces of research, it's an organization, I can talk about this tomorrow too, because I love it, because it talks about, it's an organization called 6 Seconds. They do all emotional intelligence work. And the name 6 Seconds comes from, there's some brain science research that says it takes 6 seconds between stimulus and when you react. And if you make the most of those 6 seconds, you'll pause and you'll be in a space of response versus reaction. So it's being able to, that's where the building self-awareness, it's building a muscle. Okay, I feel the trigger or whatever we want to call that, the button push or whatever it was. Okay, I see it, pause. What does that pause look like? Well, it can look like a lot of things. It can look like taking a walk. It can look like taking a breath. It can look like turning to my coworker and saying, I'm losing my shit for a minute, right? but just, and naming it, but taking that 6 seconds, and then I can go, okay, now how do I choose to be in this moment? Because that's really what we want to teach ourselves.
Right.
And what we want to teach our young people is how can I be at choice? And that's lifelong work. That is lifelong work. But how can I continually grow myself so I'm operating at choice versus reaction?
There's still a group of people, I would say an older group of people, higher position group of people who love, this is what I see a lot of times in the workplace, who love this stuff for you, but not for me. And I see people in this space where a lot of people will complain, bicker, whatever it is. I wish the boss would hear this. And it's not just the boss right above them, it's the C-suite type of people of that's for you kind of stuff, not me. How can we maybe give hope to staff or for those people?
I have a lot of passion about this one. I have a lot of passion about this conversation. Back before, I was full-time doing the Flourish Lab, I had an organization called Stand Up. And Stand Up really worked on, it was just emotional intelligence in nonprofits as a whole, all the way from, who you're serving to leaders, all the way to, culture change in organizations. And it's here's my story about that. I like to think of organizations as concentric circles.
Okay.
And so, here's our young people, if we're talking about a youth organization, and then, our site staff or our people working, our staff that's working directly with kids, we have our site managers or our multi-site managers, right? And then, our admins and then systems, et cetera. And so I will often, I'll have that on the board or I would have a PowerPoint. And I was working with an organization, and it was that level of like multi-site management kind of level. And we were talking about this idea of emotional intelligence organizations, and someone raised their hand. I'm like, yes. And he said, here's the problem. We've got a moat. And, it was like, I've never read that because that's such a visual, right? Because we're doing SEL work with kids. We're having our site staff and our leadership do emotional intelligence, adult SEL kind of work. And then there's a moat. And then there's what you would refer to as the C-suite, right? And the frustration around that of like, why? And then we get less buy-in here because they're like, well, why am I being asked to do this work? Which is not always easy, as you know, because if we're going to do self-awareness work, if we're going to take those buttons and look at what's behind them, it's vulnerable work.
Right.
It's not always easy work. So if we're going to, well, why aren't other people? And there's a real disconnect there. And so I quit doing a lot of work with organizations that weren't willing to do it at all levels of the organization.
That's all levels.
Because here's the thing. I mean, I don't want to do work that's not meaningful and isn't going to have impact. And if leadership isn't bought in, maybe that's just like some one-on-one coaching, right? Or who knows what that looks like. It might look different. But what's the message? And so if we're not, I don't want to do work if we're not truly invested. I want to do some checkbox work. I'm just not interested in that anymore in my, career. And then one other story about that. I was Denver got this huge grant, the Wallace Foundation. I don't know. The SEL grant. Are you familiar with the SEL?
I'm familiar with Wallace.
Yeah. So it was like this 5-year grant for SEL, and it was it's probably about 3 years ago that it ended. And I had the just awesome opportunity to work with the city of Denver and a bunch of their partner organizations. And some of the most fulfilling work was just working directly at sites with staff, coaching on site and doing, intensely with sites. And I remember working with this site lead and really kind of digging into some of those things, right? Like what kind of gets in your way of using your voice. That was one of her challenges, right? And it was using her voice because she would shut down and she would just say, okay, I'll do it, whatever you say. And and not stand up for herself. And just had amazing growth in her site and her little cohort that she worked in. And then she would go to meetings at the central office and try this new skill and get shut down. And so it was then make this decision, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Right.
So that's where, that's where it causes the disconnect. We're not serving our people by just giving them some training on emotional intelligence if we're not embracing it as part of our organizational culture, and this is who we say we are. So
yeah. Do you find with teaching this stuff that there's simple gaps that could be filled as far as leadership is concerned? Like you're missing it by this much, but man, if you were to make these changes in leadership, like your organization will change, your staff will change.
I don't think there's a quick fix.
Yeah, no, there's never.
But one
Consistency
of the couple things I wanted that made me think of. One is the work that you do is so important. As like you said, people be really great programmers, and now I'm in a leadership position, but have no leadership training. And again, it's kind of like, well, how are you supposed to know? How are you supposed to know what an effective leader looks like or an effective manager? So I think what you do is so important. I have such a place in my heart for that site lead position, because man, they are loaded. They are loaded with like responsibility. They've got parents and families. They've got their staff. They've got young people. They've got their boss above them. They've got the grant they're supposed to get this thing done. I mean, it's unreal. So they moved from being a programmer to this leadership position with so much responsibility, with oftentimes very little training around what that shit looks like.
Good.
Yeah. So I think that's one thing that's just really interesting. And so I love when I meet people that are doing that work, because it's vital work to do in after school programs. And then the second piece is, I'm just so big on, like, who do we say we are? Like, who do we say we are as an organization? So if what we're doing with young people, another just kind of core foundational thing in the Flourish Lab is moving from power to partnership, right? Adult power to a youth adult partnership. And so if we're going to do that with our young people, what does that look like then when we're talking about supervisory roles or leadership? How do we move from, just like you said, now going from like, now I'm in charge, right? Shifting that mindset into a partnership mindset with our team. How do we shift all the way as an organization that we're letting go of some, when you said C-suite, that's a button for me, right? Because there are some like youth organizations that actually say they have a C-suite. I just think it's interesting. Just even the words and the language speak to power.
Yes.
Yes. And so how do we give up the power dynamics a little bit?
Yeah.
And so that's not a quick fix. I mean, that's a whole shift of who do we say we are? What are our values? What does that look like in practice?
Well, I take it a step further. I heard somebody say this. I'd be lying if I told you who said it, but I know that I heard somebody say, just because you say that's who you are doesn't mean that's who you are. And I think it was around culture. Because you talk to people like, what's the culture here? Oh, it's this, and this. I'm like, okay, are they going to say the same thing? So I was like, you want to know what your culture is? Ask the person who was just hired. Ask the person who's been here for a year, and ask the veteran. Ask the people who are the happiest and the people who are feel the worst. You'll know what your culture is.
Yeah, that's so good. There's a I don't know if it's a TED Talk or something, or it's just a speech. There's a YouTube video, and it talks about very similar. It's about company values is what it actually is about. But the idea is like moving beyond posters and mouse pads, right? Like your culture isn't what's on a poster. It's how people feel on us. I heard someone say it. Culture is how you feel on a Sunday night.
Yes. Because what's going to happen on Monday?
You can feel that, right? Like my husband calls them the Monday scaries, right? Like so what's your culture? How do people feel about coming in? So yeah, it's the feeling part. Yeah. It's not the what we do or what we say we are. It's how are we being.
And I think to me that's my biggest thing is like and I heard you say this in a podcast as well. But it's about it's not, what's the word you use? You use the word, it's not about theory. It's about actionable things that we can actually do. And so I have this thing because I do both, and you do the same thing, keynoting and teaching. And I hate just motivational speakers because everyone's like, yeah. And then now you get excited to lift 300 pounds, but now you got to go to the gym and you have to lift it. I can't lift it and you gain the muscle from it. So now what? You didn't teach me anything except to get excited. And now when adversity punches me in the chin, I'm down for the count. So like, how do we do something that's, a little bit more? And so to me, the motivational piece that I see from that word that gets you going, the C-suite, I worked with some organizations where they're like, we need to redo our values and our mission statement. And they put these big old huge words and this huge paragraphs. And I'm like, This is how you know you have a really good mission and vision statement, is when your staff can repeat it and you actually do what it says. Like I worked with an organization where they're like, we make sure that we bring value to not only the students, but to their families, because and it was this long thing. And I was like, what is your mission and vision? What is your mission and vision? And people were like, I don't know. And I was like, this is your culture. I don't know where our goals are. I don't know what we're out leading to. I come to work every single day, Groundhog's Day, and I don't know what we're leading towards. If you're not leading your staff and your organization isn't really going anywhere, so what do we have to figure out to get on the same wavelengths? And they changed it to, we are intentional with the value that we bring to every student and their family. Done. So then it's like, okay, so how are you doing that every single day? Are we bringing value every day to the students and their family? So going back to what you said, like, hey, you can say it, but are you doing this actionable piece?
Yeah.
So ending, because I know that we're going to do this. What is, so the organization or my company that I have is Raise the Bar. What is an actionable step that we'll do this and maybe in order, if you will, but like a staff can do to raise the bar, like in the trenches staff can do to raise the bar?
I'll go really kind of micro, which is kind of what we talked about. Like, have some strategies for pausing. Starting there.
I love that.
Start there. And not every strategy works for everybody. And we like take a deep breath is like the most common one. And that can be really effective. Like I love taking a good deep breath, calm my ass down really fast.
Right.
But that may not work for you.
Right.
So let's all pick some and practice them and try them. But we have some practices we use as a team because it's normal and understandable that you are going to get frustrated, that it is sometimes going to be hard. Yeah. That's real.
Yeah.
So when it does, not if it does, what's your go-to? Yeah. So I think that is the first one. And then to practice it, because piggybacking off of what you said, Juan, is one of my favorite phrases. Self-awareness is everything, but it doesn't change anything. So just by knowing that it can be hard and I'm going to be triggered and that I have some strategies isn't going to change anything. Now, until I have the awareness, then I got nothing.
Right.
But if I don't put something into practice, then nothing changes.
Yeah. I love the pause part because I get visuals when people speak. And so in speaking and keynoting, sometimes you have to do the pause, called the pregnant pause, to get the lean in and the listening of the audience so that you can catch the point, right? Yeah. So it's that pause. Yeah. But what happens with the pause? A lean in and a listen. So what happens when you pause?
Yeah,
a lean in and a
listen to yourself.
Love the pause part.
Absolutely, yes.
I love the pause part. And I have a faith-based background, and I tell people too who do also have a faith background. Even God rested on the seventh day. Like, he paused, did work, pause, and none of us are bigger than God.
Yeah.
Pause, just pause, like just take a break. So powerful. Middle management, kind of, they oversee these staff. What is something what they could do to raise the bar?
I'm going to say get curious. And so what does that mean tangibly, right? Like to ask questions is one, but I'm going to give something very tangible, which is one of my favorite sentence starters, which is I notice. So as a middle manager, when your team or your staff or something feels off, instead of going to that place of power and control, just to come towards and say, so hey, I notice you're off today. I notice something seems a little different today. What's going on? And start there, which launches into a conversation versus me being a director and directing your behavior. Yeah.
Where can listeners find you, follow you, and know what you're doing next? And what's next for you?
Yeah, we so theflourishlab.org is our website. We've got all kinds of things on there, and we have a newsletter that we put out once a month, and we want to create value for people that, regardless of ability to pay for something, that's something that's super important to us. So in our newsletter, we will always have some great blog posts. We do no-cost workshops at least once a month. So that's a great place to start, just getting to know us. Because I think, again, when you're doing this kind of work, like feelings work and emotional work, it's important to have a connection and a values connection. So we love to offer just things for people to just experience how we work and see if that vibe feels right. So the newsletter is a great way to kind of know what we have going on all the time. following me on LinkedIn, because that's where we do all the posts about the Flourish Lab. We don't really post much on the Flourish Lab LinkedIn, but I post all those no-cost workshops. I post
I see 'em.
lots of things. I
You do.
put content. I put some, just random thoughts from my day to day that connect to all of these things. So that's another way to follow along. We do the NAA, National After School Association Convention. That's where we, kind of have a big presence and share a lot of our work there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for doing the work that you do in making sure that people can work on themselves before they go and lead our children, because I think that's big, especially in a place now where we see a lot of hurt even happen on schools, from whatever, coaches to teachers, and it's like, pause, but understanding the work of take care of yourself so that you can take care of our young people and the work that you do. I've followed you on LinkedIn for a little bit of time. I love the work that you do. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate you reaching out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Relevant Development Podcast. Make sure that you elevate yourself. In order to do that, you need to raise the bar and pull yourself up to the next level, but you can't do that unless you raise the bar. See you on the